What's up, legends, and welcome back to another Meta Monday. Today we are talking about No Contest Expecteth in what I believe is the third ever card conversation known as its nickname, Card Convo. Woohoo! This is a reoccurring bit video type, I guess, where I just break down individual cards because some individual cards are really cool and deserve entire breakdown videos on, like A Magician Never Reveals Its Secrets. And some cards are not cool. Some are bad, and sometimes I want to talk about why a certain card is bad and really break it down, because it's easy to just look at a card and say, yeah, it's bad, but then to dedicate a whole 30 plus minute video to why a certain card is bad, maybe because you're just a little bit salty that one of your favorite characters is unplayable in today's meta. And you know what? Hypothetically speaking, that would be a good video for a card conversation to have, I guess. I like to keep it light and fun on this channel, even when talking about heavy number crunching strategical things. This video, I think, will probably be the video that breaks me. If there's a video where I become a salty old cow instead of a soggy old cow, this will be the video. So I apologize in advance for that. But today we're talking about No Contest Expecteth from Beowulf's deck. Let's just pull it up on the screen. Yeah, great art. Beowulf's about to curb stomp your sidekick into the ground. Unless they block, of course. So just breaking down the card. 3 value attack, Beowulf only. Only 2 copies of it in the deck. No Contest Expecteth. It has boost value of 3, which means you can plug it into Ancient Heirloom if you don't have Hot for Battle in your hand and you don't feel bad about wasting a good card. And it says, after combat, if you attacked a sidekick and won the combat, you may spend 3 rage to defeat that sidekick. So, on paper, the idea of this card is really cool, right? Beowulf is this amazing warrior. He's the equal of Grendel. He's fought a dragon to the death. So, in theory, on paper, in the book, he shouldn't have to deal with a sidekick of all things without expending too much energy. So the idea is that he's just gonna one-shot your sidekick because they are nothing to him, and he's a great warrior and they stand no threat in theory. In reality, it is actually really hard to win a combat with a 3 value attack if your opponent blocks. Most of the time they will, because Beowulf attacking your sidekick with 3 rage is super telegraphed, and that's also kind of a hefty cost. Rage isn't necessarily hard to get sometimes, because from pings and just getting attacked, and from some of your cards you get rage, but spending 3 rage all at once is how you do your big 8 value Ancient Heirloom attack. 2 rage is what you spend on equal of Grendel. So those are expensive things, and so spending 3 rage on a sidekick is kind of a heavy opportunity cost, especially with how difficult it is to actually trigger this. So I wish if they were to change this card, they either made the value higher or removed the win condition, or kept it the same but made it automatic. I don't know. As you'll see at the end of this video, I think Beowulf has a lot more problems going for him right now than this card. But this card is kind of the crux of his issues, and also the easiest thing to point at and say this is bad. And the community has kind of known this card is bad for a while, but today we're breaking down exactly why it doesn't really work. And so to get a better view of what this card would be used for, let's take a look at what the the target audience for this effect actually is. So there are currently 48 other heroes in the game. There are 49 including Beowulf. If we remove the solo heroes or the multi-hero heroes, there are 20 of them, 20 heroes that have no sidekick. If we narrow this down even further, there are 7 heroes that have multiple 1 HP sidekicks. So we can get rid of those as well, because if you're attacking a 1 HP sidekick with no contest expecteth and you win the combat, you kill it anyway. So you don't need to spend the rage on that effect. You also should probably be killing them with Remnant of Valor instead of this card, but who cares about efficiency? And going from here, of the remaining heroes with sidekicks that are multi-HP, there are actually 2 special case heroes, Yanenga and now Oda Nobunaga, who have multiple multi-health sidekicks. And we'll talk about maybe why or why not no contest expecteth is a good option for these heroes when we get to them specifically. But for a while now, I've known about Oda being a part of playtesting, and so I was like, well, can't make this video yet until he's in the game. And then I'm going to make it before more sidekicks get released and the video is immediately outdated. We are going to go through the remaining 21 heroes and talk about each of their sidekicks, what the no contest expecteth expectation is when playing those heroes, how easy it is to kill them, how much you actually want to kill them, how possible is it, and how Beowulf might do in that matchup in general, although a lot of that is just going to be me riffing on previous experience or just talking out my bum. But so here we go. We are going to go in release order, starting with the Jabberwock from Battle of Legends Volume 1. This is a beefy 8 health sidekick that actually has a decent amount of cards that can do some damage to Beowulf. Jaws That Bite is pretty good into everything you have but Skirmish, and Claws That Catch is, I guess, alright into Grendel, although you still will take 2 extra damage over that. But anyways, Jabberwock, beefy, got a lot of health, got some nasty attacks. Probably want to kill it. It has 9 no contest expecteth stomping blocks. You're going to see that acronym a lot later in the video. Feint, Momentous Shift, Manxome Foe, and Skirmish. It has some other blocks available to it that will not stop no contest expecteth, and those are Regroup. I actually think, despite having almost a third of the deck able to stop no contest, the threat of it is actually really good against Jabberwock, because if it doesn't have Feint available in its hand, Shift, Foe, and Skirmish are all cards that Alice would rather use, particularly when big. So maybe baiting it or just going for it and forcing a good block out of Jabberwock would be a decent strategy. I think this matchup is relatively even, and if you can give Alice some dead cards in her deck by just removing the Jabberwock early, might be a good time. Next we have Merlin, formerly arguably one of the best sidekicks in the game. Merlin is the powerhouse of Arthur's deck, and so getting rid of him and his 7 HP body early might be pretty nice. Again, there are some cards that Arthur would rather use, like Shift and Skirmish. Although the 2 copies of the Merlin specific Bewilderment absolutely destroy you here and everything you'd attack with, basically. And not including the regroups, Merlin has 11 no contest expecteth stopping blocks, so pretty decently hard to kill Merlin, I think, and especially as a ranged fighter. Arthur's really not going to give you that many opportunities to do it. I've heard people speculate that Arthur is a decent matchup into Beowulf. probably because you can like boost over Grendel and get extra damage, and there aren't that many blocks that Beowulf has available. But if Beowulf can get any sort of like decent exhaustion game going, it's probably GG. Because he can just run, make Arthur boost maneuvers. Probably a bad time for him. Next is the Porter. I should also say the Arthur matchup like is not relevant at all, so why does it matter? But we are going through every single sidekick here. So the Porter, not going to spend too much time talking about this. A third of Sinbad's deck can stop No Contest Expecteth, and Sinbad absolutely destroys Beowulf with pressure and the fact that he's only taking 2 damage from Grendel when you hit him with Voyages. And Sinbad doesn't really care about exhaustion because he's going to be able to maneuver and hit you anywhere you go on the map. Maybe not early in the game. So, like, doesn't matter if you play all your passes because he's just going to run up and kill you if you're not double maneuvering and looking for blocks. So, yeah. The Porter is basically an excellent extension of Sinbad, especially early in the game when he wants to get pressure out. He wants to draw cards with By Fortune and Fate, and he probably won't be able to reach you everywhere on the map. So kind of having this 2-headed giant, having the Porter cover the ground that Sinbad can't earlier in the game. Really good. But again, the Porter has a ton of cards available that will stop you from killing him, and it's probably just easier to like just Grendel the Porter twice and kill him that way, since you're not really gonna get that much Grendel damage on Sinbad anyway. Next we have Jackalope from the Bigfoot's deck, from the Bigfoot and Robin Hood set. We're not even going to entertain the possibility that you can kill Jackalope with this card, because almost half of Bigfoot's deck, 14 cards, stop this card. And for a sidekick as important as the Jackalope, there is no way that Bigfoot is ever letting you stomp his sidekick like that. So, yeah, your best chance for that would be probably just trying to hit over a cancel with like a big boosted heirloom, and then you lose out on a bunch of your damage on Bigfoot. So, funny how that works. Next, we have Watson from Sherlock's deck in Cobble and Fog. Watson only has 9 No Contest Expecteth stopping blocks. And this matchup in particular actually shouldn't just be written off. Yes, Sherlock is Sherlock, but he wins a lot of his games not really by fighting you or pressuring you, which is something that Beowulf will appreciate, as he kind of flops over like a wet banana when pressure gets thrown his way. So Holmes is just going to sit back and drop his intercontinental ballistic scheme missiles from across the map, and Beowulf is kind of content doing the same. He'll get some good Grendel damage and can actually play a mean exhaustion game himself, depending on what Holmes discards from him, but at the same time you do have random discards to kind of make him discard some stuff as well. TDC Jason has formerly gone on the record saying that he actually prefers the Beowulf side of that matchup, except TDC Jason is an absolute mad lad. So props to him. But looking at the Watson cards available, Faint Education Never Ends, which is the one that has the weird win condition, draw conditions. Study Methods, which will win the combat versus No Contest and let the Holmes player look at your hand. Nice. And Fixed Point in a Changing Age, which will heal Watson after the combat. So decent options, and it's like pretty telegraphed. The Holmes player is like probably fine just throwing Faint on Watson whenever you attack him, because Holmes has better things to block with. So yeah, maybe a slightly favored matchup for Beowulf if your name is Jason Ashley Hager, and if not, I would say good luck. Why are you playing against Sherlock? Next is Faith from the Buffy set. Faith only has 8 No Contest Expecteth stopping blocks in Faint, Momentous Shift, and the Rogue Slayer. Angel's deck, notoriously bad when it comes to defenses, because think there's only like 10 or 13 blocks. Yeah, I think it's those 11 cards, and then what Angel has brooding. So like not a lot of options to begin with, and that's including Momentous Shift as one of them. Just horrible, horrible, horrible. I mean, you just exhaust Angel unless you somehow get pressured, and Grendel sometimes deals 5 damage. Yeah. Next we have Giles, who has 6 no contest expecting stopping blocks for Buffy's deck. Now the Buffy sidekicks are separated because they do actually have a different amount of blocks. And again, this isn't really a matchup that I'm concerned about for Beowulf, because with all of these Buffy characters, you just exhaust them because they draw too much and they don't really outvalue you, and they don't really have the damage output to deal with all of your stuff. But yeah, only Fate and Skirmish for the Librarian. I mean, you'd still probably want to kill him before he plays 3 copies of Insight. Yeah, his version of that scheme is called Insight. Sherlock's is Eliminate the Impossible, and Houdini's is Set the Stage, except when he does it, it comes with a free maneuver that teleports him anywhere across the map. So yeah, probably Giles is someone you want to... Giles. I can't even remember. It's been so long since I watched the Buffy show. I got halfway through season 3 and then just stopped watching. That season had like a good arc going. I want to finish that. Season 2 was weird. Angel was evil. Fun times. Anyways, so yeah, you actually want to kill Giles. Xander probably matters less in that matchup, just because what he provides is like some 4s that draw cards that get Buffy closer to exhaustion, although I guess those are still like attack threats, and he has 2 more no contest stopping blocks, except they are conditional, because Right Hand Man by itself will not stop no contest because it's only a 2. It turns into a 6 when Xander is adjacent to Buffy. So as long as, I mean, whenever Buffy and Xander are, or whenever Xander is out for Buffy, the Buffy player usually just keeps them connected at the hip for as long as possible to at least show that card, or at least bluff that card. So forcing that out defensively would be nice, because that card does work into Grendel. But again, not really a matchup you're too worried about as Beowulf. And lastly, Drusilla, 9 no contest expecteth stopping blocks. The 3 copies of Always Surprising are it's like a 1 value blind boost if one of the people's on a shadow token. I can't remember which one, double the value of the boost card. So like, I think if Drusilla or the opponent, I don't even remember the wording on these cards. They're not important enough for me to dedicate brain cells to remembering. But yeah, it's Spike. Exhaust him. And lastly, for the Buffy set, we have Terara. 7 no contest expecteth stopping blocks, but Willow is one of the few characters in the game that can actually resurrect her sidekicks. So it's probably not worth spending 3 rage to defeat someone that can come back. Also, it's Willow. Exhaust her. Next, we have the Huntsman from the Little Red and Beowulf set. This was the in-set matchup. This card was designed to beat the Huntsman, and oh boy is it. The Huntsman has 0 no contest expecteth stopping blocks by themselves. However, when knives are in the basket for Little Red, the 3 copies of Stones in the Belly will trigger the random discard and then stop the contest from not being expected. So yeah, basically the Huntsman will auto die to this card unless knives are in the basket and red defends with stones. Because if she doesn't, if she just defends with Once Upon a Time, that's only a 2. No value increase there. And bada bing. Dead Huntsman, which will greatly help you win in that match. Of course, I'm just like remembering now, if you're playing on a map with items, these numbers aren't necessarily accurate because the defender can just camp on an item with a block that normally wouldn't stop no contest and just make it impossible for you to kill them while they're on the item with that card, at least while the item is still on the map. So yeah, more things that make this card bad. Woohoo! Next we have archers. So while you technically can use No Contest Expecteth on the archer, if you're winning the combat, you're dealing a damage to the archer. So if the archer is already damaged, it'll die without you having to spend the rage, which is nice. If it was at full health and you won the combat, you dealt the damage to it, you would have to attack into something like a Divide and Conquer or Pin the Prey. This will just win over Pin the Prey automatically. You won't have to spend any rage. If the archer's at full health and blocks, the only thing that you can actually kill it over is a not triggered Divide and Conquer. Everything else will just full stop it. And then you're spending 3 rage to deal 1 damage to a sidekick that Yanenga can potentially get 5 of back. So yeah, don't spend the rage on the archers. You also just like lose to Yanenga in general. So, and next we have Patroclus, Pat, because I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right. From Achilles' deck, Pat has 10 no contest stopping blocks, although Pat sometimes plays Battle Hardened a lot, which is actually like a pretty key card in that matchup. And so you might actually catch the Achilles player lacking and be able to win over a Battle Hardened. I'm also now remembering that Under Achilles' Helm is a card that exists, and if you attack Achilles with No Contest Expecteth with 3 rage, and then Achilles swaps Pat in, you'll win the combat because Helm is only a 2, and you could kill Pat if the Achilles player lets you. But that is such a niche scenario for you to attack Achilles, hoping he plays that card and hoping he switches. Which, like, if he's doing the swap and saying, sure, go ahead, kill my sidekick, I guess you should ask yourself why. This actually is a pretty tight matchup. It was game 5 of the Winter of Champions 2022, Summer of Legends 2022. I don't know, the tournament where I beat Zero Skater 12. And Chad and Darkblade were in the finals. This was game 5. This was the closeout game. And I believe Chad won with Beowulf against Achilles by exhausting him on Soho. That was a really close map. Really close match, I should say. Really close game as well. But yeah, there's a lot of things that stop Pat from dying, and I think a lot of times you kind of don't want to kill Pat early because then Achilles is big for longer, and big Achilles just kind of hurts. Although, depending on the time, like the timing of Pat dying in that matchup is super important because Beowulf is trying to exhaust Achilles, which he does even faster when he's angry. But if Achilles gets a bunch of attacks in, you only have 12 blocks, which can be a problem. So this is a really fun matchup. Depends on the map. Depends on the flow of the game. Although, like, in general, the Achilles player is probably just gonna like self-damage Pat with the pack cards and get him low early. So you might not even have to use this card. Just use a bigger attack and maybe kill him. Although maybe killing Pat early before he gets value out of those cards might be worth looking into. Again, that match is like very... That's why I love Achilles games, because they're always so different. You always have to like feel out the game. You never really know if you're making the right decision or not in the moment, which is exciting. We need more characters like that that are kind of more fluid to pilot and play against. Next, we have Misty Knight from Luke Cage's deck from Redemption Row. Now, this is actually probably one of the most relevant matchups on the list, because it is my opinion that Beowulf kind of screws Luke Cage, and that is because Equal of Grendel exists. Because a full value Ancient Heirloom is an 8 value attack. Luke can only block for 4 with like a Trash Talk or a Power Man. So both heirlooms guaranteed 4 damage. That's 8 damage. If you get the 2 spin to win damage off of Wiggy on Luke, that's 10 damage. And then even if all 3 Grendels hit regroups, that's 3 damage. That's 13 damage. So, like, on paper, if you just go through your deck, play all your cards, you can kill Luke. Wow, the math is cool. So, this is actually a matchup where, like, getting every advantage you can in order to win, like, a very possible win for you is important. So how easy is it to kill Misty Knight? Misty has 5 guaranteed no contest stopping blocks, 3 Trash Talks, which of course will cancel no contest expecteth, and Daughter of the Dragon on defense, because you can only attack Misty when you are adjacent to her, unless you're on Hell's Kitchen and use the map, very niche scenario, because then you won't be adjacent to her. That'll only be a 2. And Misty has Got My Back. Whether or not this is actually conditional, because Got My Back is a 1 for Misty, but she can swap with Luke, which will make it a 3, and Luke would take no damage from the attack. And even if you buffed it with like an item or something, that would still just damage Luke. Although now I'm actually wondering if that combat interaction, because you still won, defeat the opponent's... I don't know. You did attack a sidekick, although you're not attacking a sidekick anymore. So who knows? Does Got My Back say your hero, Luke Cage, is now the defender of the combat? I'm assuming if it does that, it would not stop that. I'm assuming that interaction would not work like that. Even if they switched and you won the combat, you still probably couldn't kill Misty Knight. I don't know why the Luke player, given that opportunity, would not choose to swap. Although I could see if it was like a first action, no contest, Luke swapping into a Beowulf with full rage with another action might be a little precarious depending on the hand he's holding. So might be a situation where he doesn't swap, but I think for the most part, you use Misty as a ranged character, force Beowulf to maneuver in, then swap. It'll be the end of his turn. Then you just smack him. Because that's how Luke wins that matchup, just smacking Beowulf faster than he can draw his Grendels. So yeah, but even with 7 conditional blocks, that is still not a lot compared to some of the characters we've seen so far. And especially Beowulf getting rid of ranged commanding impacts will matter a lot in that matchup. Next is Malcolm from Sattler's deck from the Sattler vs. T-Rex Jurassic Park set. Malcolm has 5 no contest stopping blocks, 3 feints, 1 must go faster, 1 hey. If you were to ask me which one was which and what they did, I could not tell you. One of them moves your other fighter 4 spaces if you win the combat, question mark. Don't know what the other one does. It just goes to show you how often I play Sattler. And Malcolm has a bunch of blocks that will not stop no contest, such as regroup, chaotician, life finds a way, lock the doors, and the concept of attraction. Wowee. That's what, 10 cards that don't stop it? So he has 15 blocks available to him, and only 5 stop it. Wow. This is a sidekick where it like actually is very possible for you to get the no contest effect off. Does it matter in the end though? I guess if you're getting rid of possible copies of Life Finds a Way, yes. But also you probably just exhaust Sattler, especially since she's move 2 and draws a lot of cards and maneuvers a lot. So yeah, probably not a super big deal anyways. Next we have Bess from the Houdini versus Genie set. I started by saying all the sets that the sidekicks were from. I don't really know if I need to do that. Because like if you're 30 minutes deep into a Beowulf roast video, you probably are adept at this game enough to not need me to say that. But cheeky inside joke for the people that have watched this channel for a while, but Bess has 7 no contest stopping blocks, 3 misdirections, which are Houdini's feint, pseudo feint, that probably will not play on defense for Bess in any circumstance, 2 copies of Smoke and Mirror, and 2 copies of And the Beautiful Bess, which he also probably will not play, so that he can either gain actions or I'm pretty sure that would trigger the card draw off of Vigor and Courage, but again, I'm not super sure on the wording of some of these cards, unfortunately. Bess also has All Part of the Show, which I think actually will not save her, because that is in defensive after combat effect. And you defeat her with an offensive after combat effect, which will trigger after that. So it's not all part of the show, Bess. Beowulf gets absolutely slaughtered in this matchup, so this doesn't matter at all. Fun. Yeah, the sidekick is not why Houdini wins that matchup. Next is Shuri from Black Panther's deck from the Marvel for King and Country set. I know I just pointed out how I probably don't need to do that, but we're just going to keep doing it. This is actually a matchup where you really want to kill the sidekick so you can exhaust the hero, because the sidekick with the 2 copies of whatever that scheme is called that takes 2 cards off your deck, adds it to the vibranium suit. You're trying to exhaust Panther. Panther will do that himself with all the boosting, but taking away a pass and something that takes 2 cards from your deck is super important. And Shuri only has 6 cards that can stop it. And forcing Shuri to maybe use a feint and like cat-like reflexes and evade like aren't necessarily bad cards either. They're like alright blocks, although I guess you're not really attacking Panther too often for him to not really throw like the 4s or the claws on defense every single time. So probably just Shuri only blocks anyways, but no contest will beat Regroup and Nano Triage Processor, which like I guess the processor is like a reasonable block for Shuri to use, but probably not when you're at 3 rage because it's so telegraphed. Yippee! So yeah, you probably can just kill Shuri with pressure anyways. Also, Fatal Struggle is a guaranteed win over Shuri because that is a 4. She can only value block for 3. Of course, she can feint it, but that might be a good way to keep up with the card draw against Panther. Just farm draw from the sidekick because that would probably be a disaster if you hit into Panther and he was able to win the combat with the blue 2 he can boost, the claws that he can boost, the 4 giving him cards probably will not make your life easier. So yeah, you probably want to use the Fatal Struggles in that matchup against Shuri or not at all. And then when you get Shuri down to a low enough health total, maybe Panther just doesn't block, depending on how many schemes he's seen. So yeah, might be a close matchup. Panther might just destroy Beowulf. Don't really know because Beowulf isn't really relevant anymore, and neither is Panther. Oh god, why did I pick him against Mitosis in last tournament's bracket? Anyways, next is Maria Hill from the same set, but Black Widow's deck. Maria has 9 no contest stopping blocks, 3 feints, 3 acting director of shields, which are cards that she actively wants to play in order to get her missions back, double identity, which will swap, although it doesn't necessarily need to swap since it's already printed 3, and life model decoy. Again, it's so interesting how these resurrection effects interact with this card, because just like the Bess revive, life model decoy is a 0 value block, and it says if your fighter was defeated during this combat, like return it next to Black Widow with X amount of health, whatever, except that's on the defensive card, and your after combat as the attacker will go after any and all effects on Maria's card. So it doesn't matter if she revives, you just kill her. So that might actually be a reasonable card to attack with, or at least bluff when Maria is at 3 or less health, because then it takes away those block options for her. It also just like straight up would kill her anyways if she wasn't at a low enough health total to die. But anyways, 9 cards is like a decent amount to block with, and I think Widow just outvalues Beowulf anyways. Although you might have the damage output depending on if you hit a 1 or a 5 with your Grendels, so who knows. Next, we have Wong from the Marvel Brains and Brawn set. This is Doctor Strange's Sorcerer Supreme, the sidekick. Wong only has 2 guaranteed blocks to stop this. He has 2 feints, which will cancel this. Master of Camartage is a divide and conquer type card. It's a versatile 2 that becomes a 4 if Wong and Strange are adjacent. And if the Strange player is gravely concerned about losing a slightly expendable sidekick, he'll just keep them adjacent and at least bluff Master of Camartage. But might actually be like reasonably easy to kill Wong in this matchup, depending on how the draw goes early in the game for both of you. If you can get to 3 rage early and you have this card, why not just go and try to hit Wong, see what happens? Because I think Strange has a really good chance of landing an undefended rings, especially on Wiglaf in this matchup, and then kind of just spiral out of control from there. But if you can get some pressure early, remove Wong, maybe corral Strange and just beat the devil out of him, Bob Ross style, Grendel will probably do some good work in that matchup. But I don't imagine that's very easy, but it would make an uphill battle slightly more level. So I say go for it, especially since the odds are in your favor, as you can see. Interesting. I actually really like that there's hope for Beowulf in that matchup. Next, we have Charlie from Annie Christmas's deck for Tales to Amaze. Charlie has 10 no contest expecteth stopping blocks, 2 long shots, which are the 3 versatiles that become a 5 when Charlie is not adjacent. I think that's how that card works. I think that card's actually in any. Quite a Pair, which is the cancel if they reveal 2 matching cards. Better Together, which is a 4, and Slick Talker. So that's 10 no contest expected stopping blocks. It's a third of the deck. That's a decent chunk. Although you probably like would want to kill Charlie, just because that's like a decent amount of health to get rid of. But I don't imagine this matchup being super fun for you, since Grendel will more than likely turn on Annie's combat buff if you use it, if it wasn't active already. And she starts with what, 14 health? You have 18 health. She's going to have her ability right out of the gate. I imagine that is just pressure, 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 and then you'll die. But Grendel, well, old Grendel would have killed Annie depending on what her health total was, but now it won't immediately kill if she attacks with something big while she's at low health, because that would have been a great way to get around Mississippi Queen. So maybe like if this set was released 2 years ago, this would have been like an alright matchup for Beowulf, regardless of the ability to kill Charlie easily. But Annie isn't super relevant anyways, so it probably doesn't matter. We have Daisy next. I'm just seeing there's 13. That number's 13. Yeah, you're not gonna kill Daisy in this matchup. And lastly, we have the Honor Guard for Oda Nobunaga. They only have 2 no contest expecteth stopping blocks. I've been saying that all video and I still can't say it right, which are just the momentous shifts, which they probably don't want to play on defense, but they have 7 more conditional blocks, because if they are in the same zone as Oda, their defenses will have +1, and that way battle maneuvers and spring the trap both go from 2s to 3s, which will stop no contest. And unlike Yananga's archers, even though there's multiple honor guard, them having 6 health is actually like much more worth to spend 3 rage on, I feel. And also Oda, you just cripple him when you remove his sidekicks, especially one. Makes it a lot harder for him to flank you, and it's kind of like losing a raptor early. So I do actually think it would be an alright use of this card. Again, haven't played that matchup, but yeah. I say kill them and see what happens. So if we were going to look at a tier list, not really a tier list, but it's just showing the distribution of the sidekicks ranked from like how easy they are to kill based on the number of blocks they have. Basically, like how likely is it for you to be able to use this card to its full effect against these sidekicks. And for that, I think the easiest sidekicks, factoring in the amount of conditional blocks, because obviously like the honor guard, they have 2 blocks that will just straight up win the combat versus no contest, but they have 9 total that could potentially win, which would put them in like the second tier from the top. So I think Wong, the Huntsman, Malcolm, Shuri, and Giles are probably the sidekicks you're like reasonably looking at killing with this card. Maybe Faith, maybe Misty Knight. And other than that, I think you're going to have a really hard time just based on the numbers. I think no contest being a 3 really holds it back in a lot of matchups. And then there are just some kind of sidekicks that you're never going to kill with this card, like Jackalope, Daisy, Merlin. So, yeah. This card doesn't really work in the way it was intended to work, because it doesn't have the opportunity to, just looking at the numbers. So doing a brief little, like, I guess rant for my final thoughts is that Beowulf has basically been aggressively mid-tier his entire career, up until this point, of course. That was back in an era where like exhaustion was in its infancy and hasn't really grown into the absolute bastard that it is today. Just going based on my personal tier lists, in fall of 2021, He was ranked 9 out of 19 in fall 2022. I ranked him 16 out of 32. And in summer of 2023, my most recent big tier list, I put him 19th out of 34. So basically right at that midline for all of those lists. And I think he's only really just going to get worse. He just has too many bad cards, like Hot for Battle, Remnant of Valor, this card, of course. Doesn't have enough blocks. He only has 12 total blocks, 6 of which require Rage to basically for you to even consider playing them. And he has too many situationally good cards. Fatal Struggle can just lose him games sometimes if it doesn't go the way he wants it to. Vigor and Courage, like, it's a pass. It's a random discard too, but like, does it help you win when you're already losing? Same thing for like Golden Drinking Horn. Even Heirloom requires like a big investment. And just like, you're offensively relying on 2 copies of Heirloom for basically your damage output and hoping that like Exhaustion and Grendel can do the rest, which not necessarily super reliable. Beowulf was basically only relevant because Dracula was like a popular pick after like the top tiers got banned out. And like I said, Exhaustion was more reasonable of an endgame condition back then. Infinite characters didn't exist, like Winter Soldier, Daredevil, Doctor Strange, all that BS wasn't in the game, so Beowulf could like actually properly exhaust people. And characters didn't have like absurd value games like they do now. Like some of the characters like Jill especially, but like Yananga and She-Hulk even. Decks nowadays are just better. Is that a power creep problem? Like, not really, but there are just certain older characters that just don't hold up power-wise. It's kind of like when you look at Buffy's deck and Bigfoot's deck, and you go, why does Buffy have 2 copies of a 5-value attack and a bunch of 4s? And Bigfoot just has 3 copies of a 6-value attack, a bunch of 4s, better sidekick, a bunch of cancels. Like, it's one of those comparisons. Decks these days just last longer, hit harder, and hit faster, and Beowulf can't really do anything about it. And does this bother me on a deep personal level? Kind of. I love Beowulf as a character. I did the Defender Resolves First book club episode on him. That was the first book club we actually did. And I really enjoyed reading his story. Something from like written in a different way that I'm used to. It was an epic poem, for God's sake. And that was fun. And I felt a connection with the character ever since the first time I played it, just because it was more like grindy, more control, more I'm going to play in like a certain focused way and really like wear you down, run you out of resources, just try to get every single advantage I can with the rage and things like that, resource management. It was a really cool system. And I guess this is kind of like me saying goodbye to him as a character, just because I don't see him as relevant anymore. And holy cow, like saying that out loud just made me really sad. So I guess if you've ever had a character that you loved, that you feel like isn't viable anymore, like not even in this game, in any game, I feel your pain. And so while I make this video to shit on this bad card, really, I guess it's like a cry for help. It's like, I wish things were different. Day to day, it doesn't feel like things change, but you look back and everything is different. And Beowulf, I just wanted to say, I'm sorry for not beating Robin Hood in the semifinals of Summer of Legends 2021. I let you down, and that one's on me. So thank you so much for watching. Usual stuff. And if you want to play Beowulf in 2024, play Tesla instead. Yeet.